It's time for Reason.
Don't do drugs or don't smoke because it's really, really bad for you, but we're going to raise taxes on cigarettes in the state, so that way when you go to school this year, you're going to get brand new books because we are going to use the tax money on cigarette sales. Now, I'm not against smoking. I don't care, but the hypocrisy in the government drives me nuts. They're giving us mixed signals.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah, welcome into the Voice of Reason. Can you believe it? It is a Thursday. Hailing from the center of the country, right smack dab in the middle of it in Wichita, Kansas, with the flagship of the Big Talker KQAM, broadcasting all across the Mid-America Network, across the Mid-America region, along with on TV with KGPT TV, channel 2610. Good morning. Welcome aboard. This is the Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier. It is an absolute honor to have you along on a Thursday morning, kicking off a brand new day. I thought that we would have a nice little government shutdown coming tomorrow morning. I was so excited about it. I figured that maybe I would be able to, even pick my nose without having the government regulate that in some way, shape, or form tomorrow. But our dreams have been crushed. Our lives have been destroyed. And no longer will we have to worry about the government shutting down, because now we can hold our head high, they can hold our hands, and we can move forward with utopianism and nannyism across the board. Yeah. Or something. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. It's funny how the Democrats are so quick to just move away from an issue that they thought they would be able to control. They've not been able to control it, and now, look at this, they've diverted themselves away from it, except for one, of course. In the House, Nancy Pelosi not too happy about the fact that we've disregarded the idea of immigration reform right now, trying to change the bills, trying to save the dreamers or the DACA recipients or whatever the hell they want to call them, and she's not very happy about it.
The Republican moral cowardice must end. Members of Congress are trustees of the people and of our nation. Why are we here if not to protect the patriotic young people who are determined to contribute and to strengthen America? So I'm going to go on as long as my leadership minute allows.
And she ended up going on for 8 hours on the floor, ranting and raving. Now, it's funny how she's the only one that's doing it. Why aren't they doing it in the Senate? The Democrats still want immigration reform. The Democrats still want DACA recipients to gain amnesty. The DACA recipients are still the main focus for many of the progressives and the Democrats, but the Senate has let it go. Now the bill's going to the Senate today to be able to be voted on. It is a 2-year budget extension. And don't get me wrong, it's not a good bill in any way, shape, or form, really. It does give more money to the military, and that's about the only thing that I'm okay with giving more money towards. But it's giving more money to the military. But other than that, what else is it doing? It's raising the debt ceiling. It's raising debt caps, which means that we're allowed to get further into debt. It's raising spending caps, which means that they're going to be spending more money. It's spending more on both domestic and international. It's spending more money on social programs. We didn't cut anything. We didn't cut a single thing. And they say that this was a hardly negotiated compromise bill to where neither Republicans nor Democrats got what they wanted. They're playing this off as this is the happy medium between the two. They hashed it out behind the scenes really, really darkly, really badly. They tried to find it. They were yelling and screaming. They sacrificed so much in order to do this 2-year budget extension. Now, if I remember correctly, one of the issues that conservatives and Republicans wanted to do, just Republicans in general overall, wanted to get rid of the lump sum stimulus packages and go back to appropriations bills and go back to itemized appropriation bills, one issue after another, and not do an entire budget as a lump sum across the board for everything. We wanted to actually break it up. Okay, here's spending for budgets, or for defense. Here's spending for the military. Here's spending for social programs. Here's spending for agriculture. Here's spending for the WIC program. Here's spending for X, Y, and Z. They wanted to break it up that way. That way we can look at the budget. We can start cutting our spending. But we didn't do that. $300 billion overall increase in defense and domestic spending over the next 2 years. $300 billion. Now, really, $300 billion is really kind of a drop in the bucket with how big the entire economy is, with how big the government spending already is, with the $22+ trillion that are already as a debt in our nation. It's not that much. But at the same time, when was the last time that we actually said, you know what, we can actually do without for a little bit? You know what, we actually don't have to increase our spending right now. You know what, we can actually hold off on that project. This bill is also the product of an extensive negotiations among congressional leaders and the White House. No one thinks the bill's perfect, but we worked hard to find common ground and stay focused on serving the American people. That, according to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Let me ask you something. When you increase spending everywhere across the board, how is that a compromise for anyone? That's everyone just getting what they want. That's the compromise? I mean, I know Republicans think that they're in the victory here and that they should have the big banner behind them saying mission accomplished because they were able to get more military funding, which is a good thing. And it's pathetic that the Democrats don't want additional military spending. They just want more social spending. Is that the sacrifice? The really hard-fought sacrifice that, you know, it was really back and forth, and it was very extensive, and it was a really hard negotiation, and it was a really tough thing, and I just don't know if we're going to be able to survive this. I don't know. It's going to be terrible. Because we sacrificed by everybody getting whatever spending they wanted to. Now, the reason that Nancy Pelosi is the only one talking about immigration with this is because they're in the House. Let's think politically for a second here. In the Senate, it's a very, very narrow margin, which is why the Senate had to, quote-unquote, compromise more so than anybody else and negotiate. It was a really hard thing saying you spend more and we'll spend more. Yeah, okay, bravo, we compromised. That was a very tough thing. Instead of saying, you know what, you don't need to be spending more, we don't need to be spending more, let's actually hold off on this, let's start cutting a little bit, you cut a little bit here, we'll cut a little bit here, except for the military because, you know, the military, I don't know, keeps us safe, but you cut a little bit. See, we have a Republican majority, which we forget about sometimes. And Republicans like more spending on the military and defense because we understand the importance of security, which is a very important thing to have. Which means we should be, as the Republicans, saying, you know what? We put our foot down. We're going to increase spending on military. Then we go to the social program and say, you know what? We do not want to be a society of nannyism. We do not want to be a society of dependent individuals. We're going to encourage. We did the massive tax cuts. We saw job growth. We see unemployment rates going down. We see people going back to work. We see people actually getting excited. We see more people having more money. We see great, great things happening right now. So we're going to see the economy grow, which means now's the time that we can cut back on social programs because less people are going to need them. We can finish repealing Obamacare officially, so that way we can start going back to a privatized healthcare system. We can actually start going back on regulation, so that way the private sector can start figuring things out. But we don't need your social programs. And if you want to try and filibuster it, filibuster all you want, Democrats, because we are going to be the Republican majority. We got to get it through the House or through the Senate, which has a Republican majority. It's narrow, but we have a Republican majority. We pass the budget with increased military spending and cuts everywhere else. It goes to the House, then it'll be very easy to pass. But we didn't do that. That's not how they actually worked it. Instead, we have Nancy Pelosi.
The Republican moral cowardice must end. Members of Congress are trustees of the people and of our nation. Why are we here if not to protect the patriotic young people who are determined to contribute and to strengthen America? So I'm going to go on as long as my leadership minute allows.
Yeah, we're going to go on as long as we can because Republicans are terrible, evil, horrible human beings because they don't want to take care of immigration. They don't want to take care of DACA recipients while they're trying to take care of the military. What horrible people. The fact that they actually put the military, those sacrificing their lives for this country, in front of the individuals that shouldn't be here in the first place. How terrible of them. It's a travesty, I tell you. Travesty. The budget deal doesn't have everything Democrats want. It doesn't have everything the Republicans want, but it has a great deal of what the American people want, according to Chuck Schumer. Yeah. When you have Mitch McConnell and you have Chuck Schumer both saying that it's a good bill because, we both negotiated, we compromised a little bit, and this is what we came up with, that means that the establishment rhino Republicans got what they wanted while the Democrats got what they wanted, and then the conservatives are actually left out in the cold saying, wait a second. I thought we were going to stop spending. I thought we were going to cut our budgets. After months of legislative log jams, this budget deal is a genuine breakthrough. That's how giddy Chuck Schumer is about it. And if Chuck Schumer's that giddy about a budget bill, calling it a genuine breakthrough, then we should be in trouble. We should be just a little bit concerned. Now, as I've mentioned before, Donald Trump being the negotiator, I do give him credit for the fact that hopefully he'd be able to negotiate a little bit, and at least if we're going to be spending more, it's spent a little more efficiently. But he doesn't really have a whole lot of say in that process, does he? If it was solely on him, I would have a little more faith on it, but it's not solely on him, and by the separation of powers, that is a good thing. But Congress, the establishment rhino Republicans, and a progressive liberal Democrat working together to come up with a budget where we just spent $300 billion more in the next couple of years, with more on military and then more on social programs, and they call it a genuine breakthrough for negotiations. Democrats don't negotiate. Liberal progressives don't negotiate. They don't care. They don't want to. They don't have any interest in it. They want all of their deal, which is why they shut down the government 3 weeks ago, because they wanted a non-budgetary issue to be examined during the budgetary process to extend the budget. If he calls it a genuine breakthrough, then all we're doing is breaking through the glass ceiling of irresponsible spending. That's the only genuine breakthrough that we're actually seeing here. On the other hand, the government is staying open, which makes you feel all warm and cozy inside, right? Yeah, this is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Mid-America Network.
A cool design.
Awesome technology.
More room than you think.
Everyday people to help me.
Great gas mileage.
And I can afford it.
They gave me a lifetime warranty.
We can do that. It's what you need at Midwest Kia.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Great Thursday morning to you. Appreciate you hanging out with us, starting off your day the right way. We got a lot coming up the next 2 days. I am so excited about the show for really the next couple of weeks. We have some great guests coming up. We have the Republican convention for the state of Kansas coming up next week. We'll be broadcasting the debate all across the Mid-America Network, along with KGPT TV as well. Partnering up, I'll be hosting along with Bob Weeks of Wichita Liberty TV. We'll be hosting the pre- and post-debate coverage for the first gubernatorial debate of 2018. Really, really excited and honored to be able to be part of that and to see what's going to happen at the convention next week. Coming up at the bottom of the hour in just a few minutes, we talked with him yesterday, and our listeners out on the western part of the state and down below, down yonder, down in Oklahoma, will be very intrigued by this one. Gene Perry, he's with the Oklahoma Policy Institute, talking about their legislative session, along with the special session that they're in at the same time with their budgetary crisis in Oklahoma. You guys in Oklahoma, you're having a tough time, aren't you? So we'll talk with Gene Perry coming up at the bottom of the hour. In the 8 o'clock hour today, State Senator Ty Masterson, also the chair of the Truth Caucus in the state legislature in Kansas, will be joining us and talking to us about his take on the session so far this year. The government staying open, it sounds like, and extending their budget for 2 years. Now, usually they only do 1 year at a time for the federal government, but they're going to do 2 years now, so they don't have to worry about the shenanigans of the debate and the budget for a while, and just increasing it by $300 plus billion for the next 2 years. No spending cuts anywhere. And that's our compromise, is that they kept the government open and then we not discuss immigration. Is that what the compromise is? Are we that scared about the government shutting down? I mean, I know we feel all warm and cozy when the government's there for us.
Hello? Hey, government. It's me. I just want to say, well, thanks for watching over me and doing everything you do. And please watch over Mommy and Daddy. Good night, government. Oh, yeah. And thank you, President Obama, for making me feel so safe and looked after. And if it wouldn't be too much trouble, I'd really like to get a puppy for Christmas this year. Night, government.
There you go. Feel all nice and warm and cozy. Now, Nancy Pelosi, as I mentioned briefly, the 8-hour filibuster that she did last night trying to advocate for immigration, do you realize why she's doing it as opposed to no one in the Senate? Is it because she has the numbers to do it? That's really all it is. The Democrats want to talk about immigration, but they realize it's a losing case for themselves right now. They realize they don't have an opportunity to do so right now because if they shut down the government, they'll still end up the way they did last government shutdown with zero, zilch, nada. So the Senate having to go along with the budget, but Nancy Pelosi, knowing she has the numbers, that's the political game they play, knowing it's a losing cause right now, but it's that way they can stand on their principles and they can try and filibuster and do whatever they want to. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, Eric. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Eric. How are you, my friend?
Oh, pretty good. I just, you're screaming about, we need money for the military complex. That's just being a progressive another way, man. We need a zero-sum. A zero-sum budget. Now, that would be compromised. We're not cutting. We're not going anywhere, and we're hopefully letting the country grow. But then you have these progressive Republicans, which they are, that you can call them rhinos, but they're progressive. They want to spend money and get us more and more into debt, and they want to get their votes. They want to stay where they are. I mean, the reason why they're doing all this stuff now is the Freedom Caucus is not going to vote for it. So the so-called Republicans, not conservatives, Republicans don't have the vote. I mean, if we want to be conservative, let's just not spend any more money. We're going to have $1 trillion to our budget this year. Do you know what that's going to do to my retirement? To make that dollar worth a darn.
Oh, sure. No, look, I agree with you. We should have a zero sum. We should be cutting across the board. We should be cutting all over the place. But there is a priority of really the one duty of what the Constitution tells the federal government to be concerned about, and that is national defense. And if the military says, hey, we can't do operations with the money that we have right now, we need more money for that, I'm willing to raise spending for that as opposed to saying, let's raise more money to subsidize more social programs. We need to cut, absolutely. You know me, you listen to the show. I'm one of the more conservative ones that we could have talking about cutting spending across the board, and we need to do that. I think we should get rid of numerous different agencies when it comes to spending because we don't even need them. But one duty of the government is to fund national security and make sure that the military is funded, and that's one thing that I'm okay spending on.
National security, we're going to other countries killing people so people want to come here. That doesn't seem like security. That sounds like offense to me.
Well, wouldn't you rather have offense, though? Wouldn't you have the offense of keeping something overseas as opposed to them coming over here because we didn't have the resources to keep them over there where they need to be?
Well, if we leave them alone, more than likely they won't really want to come over here. I mean, clearly one man's terrorist is another man's patriot.
I don't know about that. I mean, I've heard that argument for a while about, if we leave them alone, they'll leave us alone. But the ones that we're at war with right now, it's an ideological war. And if we didn't fight them over there, they'd be fighting us over here because they detest us. It's not just the fact that we're invading their territory and they don't like that, so they hate us. It's just the fact that if we weren't fighting them there, they would want to come here because they hate who we are and what we stand for.
Well, you can say that for the older ones who we killed all their children and they killed their brothers and sisters. But look at Iran right now. They're damn near ready to fall apart. But we're still killing people over there, and they're not liking us. I mean, yes, it will take time.
Sure.
And we should be like the Romans. I mean, the Romans were very aggressive at the very beginning, but, hey, if you mess with us, we will destroy you. That's my goal on it instead of this pity paddling that we do now.
Sure. Well, and I agree with there, Eric. I appreciate the call very much. Got to take a break here. But, I see where you're coming from. And look, I'm not out to go pick a fight somewhere and just create a war just because we have the opportunity to do so. You're right. I mean, if someone wants to mess with us, just like after Pearl Harbor, that they've awoken the giant sleeping beast kind of thing. Yeah, we need to be like that. But at the same time, we need to prevent things before they actually happen in the first place. Lots more calls coming in. Stay here. This is The Voice of Reason.
It's time for Reason.
We just increased education funding last year, $400 million over the next 2 years. That's not enough. They wanted $1 billion. So what do? They compensate by now coming out with a new lawsuit or continuing the lawsuit, asking for an additional $600 million.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Happy Thursday morning to you. Great to have you along today. Appreciate the call from Eric in that last segment. It brings up an interesting discussion that we haven't had in a while. And ideologically speaking, with the Republicans, and look, I know we kind of referenced it. I am a staunch conservative, as you know. And many individuals like to call the conservatives that focus a lot of the spending and focus on military as the evil neocons. You remember that term? It's been a while since we've heard that term, neocon, the neoconservatives, which I am proud to hold that. I mean, it's all it is. If you look at the definition of what a neocon is, a neoconservative means that you're just a conservative that focuses on the military. That's the priority when it comes to budgetary spending, when it comes to the role of the federal government is the military, is national defense, is spending for defense and spending for the military. And I got no problem with saying that I'm a neocon, a neoconservative that focuses on the military. It's the idea that Eric said, and it's not a bad idea, is more the libertarian flavor of international affairs, of you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone, and then we'll live hunky-dory. And that's nice, and I agree with that philosophy within the United States. The problem is that there are ideologies out there that just don't like us. I mean, when you have terrorists, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, remember George Bush? Al-Qaeda. We're going to get Al-Qaeda. When we had that kind of mentality, and those individuals, and they weren't even part of organizations even sometimes, and they would call Americans pigs, and they would want to attack us, and they'd hate us for the fact that we have freedoms and the fact that we're not Muslim as a country, and the fact that we have equal rights for women, and the fact that we just live the way we live. They despise us. There is evil in the world. There is evil in the world all over the place. There's people that just want to cause harm, which is why you see world wars happen, which is why you see Hitler rise to power, which is why you saw Mussolini, which is why you saw Mao Zedong, which is why you see many dictators in the world that try to expand their powers. You're right. Rome, at the beginning of their stage, they were the ones that said, if you mess with us, don't mess with us, or else we'll completely destroy you. Then they became an empire. Instead of a republic, they became an empire and began to expand to take over their other lands, and they expanded too much, and they collapsed because they couldn't securely stabilize themselves. And that's what happened to Rome, the fall of Rome, because they just expanded too much. We're not expanding. We're not taking over lands. We're not an empire. We're not trying to steal people's land or steal people's whatever. We're just there to try and stop people from hating us and try and stop people from attacking us and killing us. That's all we're doing. We're not asking for their property. We're not taking over their country. And I do agree that we've made a lot of mistakes, especially with the war in Iraq. We shouldn't have tried to create a constitution in that sense, or tried to have created some type of new government system for them that they just don't grasp and understand. I totally get that. We shouldn't have done those things. We made a lot of mistakes. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't have some type of influence over there to make sure that they're at bay, not trying to pull any kind of shenanigans and wool over our eyes. But I appreciate it very much. 316-721-8255. Let's go back to the phones real quick. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, this is Helen again.
Good morning, Helen. How are you?
I'm doing just great.
Good.
And I like your points that you're bringing up. They're wonderful. Our government told us slavery, that no longer a nation that has slaves. But according to Proverbs,
nope.
The rich ruleth over the poor.
Hey, Helen, I hate to cut you off there. You got a really bad connection. I can't understand what you're trying to say. Give us a call back, and we can try and get you back on here. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. While Helen wants to call back, and we'll get to her in just a minute as well. And if anybody else wants to call in, I want to get to our interview as well before we run out of time here. But for all of our listeners down in Oklahoma, Gene Perry with the Oklahoma Policy Institute, we talked with him yesterday talking about the budgetary issue there. So I want to play that interview, and then when we come back from that, we'll get to all your phone calls, and we can continue that discussion if we'd like to, because it is a fascinating one, and it is a lot of fun. And I do love to be able to talk about the different philosophies of what we should have a priority. The point is, though, relating to the budget real quickly, is just the fact that we should be cutting the budget across the board. I personally, though, feel that if there is one place where we should focus on our funding, it should be the military, because that is, in my opinion, the purpose of our federal government. So we'll touch on that a little bit later as well. But this is Gene Perry. He's the Oklahoma Policy Institute. Oklahoma having some issues, having some problems when it comes to their budgetary and finance problems. What's it going to look like in the state of Oklahoma? This is what Gene Perry had to say yesterday. He's with the Oklahoma Policy Institute. Mr. Gene Perry is back on the line with us. Gene, how are you, my friend?
Good. How are you doing?
Hey, doing great. I appreciate you coming back on the show. I feel so bad for you guys down in Oklahoma. It has been a long, rough road for you guys. The last time we talked back in the fall, what was it, September, October, I believe, when we chatted, we had talked about you guys were still in a special session because you have an extreme budgetary crisis down there. You weren't sure on what direction to go when it came to more cuts in places and tax hikes in certain places and focusing on different industries in some places, and you were kind of at a gridlock. What's the state of Oklahoma right now? Is it getting any better?
Well, it sounds a lot like what you just said. So they managed to kick the can down the road in all those special sessions that they've done, but they still haven't finished making the budget for the year we're currently in. And so actually on Monday, we came back into regular legislative session and also continued the second special session that they had already been in because, you know, they're both trying to fix the budget for last year in special session, and now they're back in regular session getting ready to maybe make a budget for next year as well as everything else they're supposed to do.
I didn't even know you could do that, have two sessions at the same time. So the regular session for the new year plus the extended second special session from last year. Is there a price tag that you've seen on this, on how much it's cost for a special session of the legislators to convene almost the entire year last year and going into this year to be able to afford going in to talk about something that still hasn't gotten done yet?
It hasn't really cost that much because honestly, for most of it, they didn't have a deal, so they just sent everybody home until they did.
Okay.
And so even though technically they were in session, they weren't there that much. And now, since it's two sessions at once, basically they'll just gavel out of one and gavel into the other, and they're all there already.
Gotcha. Well, talk about for those listeners who maybe not have heard you the last time or may not be familiar with the situation down there. Explain what led to this special session right now. What kind of budgetary crisis are you guys in Oklahoma, and what's been happening down there?
Sure. So last year they were facing a big shortfall just to fund the services at the same level that we had in the previous year. And this is on top of years and years. We just come out of a recession because of the oil and gas industry downturn primarily, and we cut education quite a bit, and teachers have gone more than 7 years now without a raise, and so there's been building pressure to especially do something about that. And one of the things they did was create a cigarette fee that they could pass with a simple majority because taxes in Oklahoma need a 75% majority. But the court came back and said that fee is actually a tax, it's unconstitutional, and so that opened up a big hole in the state budget. And since then, they've been trying to fill that hole as well as pass other revenues because they know that these budget problems are not going away. But since, of course, you need that 75%, it's been really, really hard to get any kind of plan that 75% of the legislature is going to agree on, as you might imagine.
Yeah, that's very tough to actually make happen. So what's been on the slate so far as potential tax increases? You mentioned the cigarette tax. Have they talked about raising taxes on like property or income, or raising sales taxes on other items, or doing a gas tax or business taxes? What's been on the table so far, and what seems to have a little bit more momentum than some of the others?
Yeah, so the most recent development is this group called the Step Up Coalition has come out with a plan. And this is a group with mostly business people that started it. Some of the biggest businesses in the state have gotten together and decided, well, we can't go on without doing something. And so they proposed a series of government reforms as well as a series of taxes, including that cigarette tax, the gas tax, increasing that by 6 cents, increasing the gross production tax on drilling from the current 2% to 4% for the first few years, and kind of this package of income tax reforms that's a little bit complicated and that they say will increase revenues by $150 million, but that's the most contentious and possibly faulty part of their plan, that it's not going to raise as much and it's not going to do as much to actually make the tax system better.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to be clear with some of the listeners in the Kansas area, because we've talked a lot about the Kansas budget, and some of the issues is you guys are in a lot different situation than we are up here, in the sense that so far we haven't cut anything out of our state budget. We come into a shortfall because we've tried to increase spending year over year over year, and we've never cut anything. And then we're talking about our budget shortfalls that we've had in our state, and we've seen tax increases to compensate for that. You guys, on the other hand, have seen budget cuts, including in education, which here they won't even touch education, though they won't even look at it. But you guys have cut in many areas already, trying to consolidate the budget the best that you possibly can and shorten it, including parts of education. And you really trimmed out as much fat as you can from many that believe it down there in Oklahoma. And now this is the result of is now on the back end, you're looking to try and do some tax increases to compensate for it, correct?
Yeah, so we've been cutting pretty much across the board for quite a few years now, and education's been cut significantly, but education even has been relatively protected compared to some of the other agencies. You know, lots of those small agencies out there have been cut 20 to 40% compared to a decade ago, as well as some that have been consolidated or eliminated altogether. So we've definitely been cutting, and now it's at least at this point among our Republican governor and a lot of the business community and many Republicans and Democrats in the legislature all saying that we need to do something, but we have a system where it's not enough for almost everybody. You need that 75% plus, and that's what's made it really hard.
There it is. That was Gene Perry with the Oklahoma Policy Institute. We don't have enough time to play the rest of the interview. Great information. If you want to listen to it, you can go to the podcast and listen to yesterday's show. That's vor.podbean.com. You can also catch the replay on the Facebook Live feed or on KGPT TV as well. So wherever you want to, but anybody interested in wanting to hear the rest of the interview, there was another few minutes left on that, on information happening at the legislative session in the state of Oklahoma. Interesting news, isn't it? The fact that they can actually have a special session and a regular session at the exact same time, trying to deal with their budgetary issues, 20 to 40% cuts across the board. Kansas, we're focusing on being in debt a lot here, and yet we haven't cut a single thing. I think it's time that we take an example of what Oklahoma's doing. What do you think?
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 1 on a Thursday morning. Great to have you along. Great to be with you as we get you excited, get you pumped up for the day. It's even better than a cup of coffee. Can you imagine? I don't even drink coffee, so I don't know. I drink coffee every once in a while. Here's the weird thing. I don't care for coffee, but when I drink it, I got to drink it black. No cream or no nothing else into it, just black coffee. It's beautiful. It's a wunderbar. Very good thing. Very good, yes. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you remember, last week we did this on a Friday, and being that it's February and it's FFA Appreciation Month for the future farmers of America, it is every Friday in the 6:30 segment in the first hour of the show, so that way we can do it all across the Mid-America Network. We have FFA Appreciation Month, and we're going to be talking with different chapters of FFA chapters all across the state of Kansas. Brought to you in part by, we really love our sponsors. Got to give them some nice love. Circle 8 Center Pivot Repair, Comark Energy Co-op, the El Dorado Livestock Auction, Kansas Wheat Commission, the Mid-America Ag Network, and, of course, KQAM Radio with FFA Appreciation Month. We love it. We'll do that again tomorrow at 6:35. To talk with another chapter of the FFA throughout the state of Kansas. So get ready for that. Looking forward to that again tomorrow morning. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Let's go right to the phones this morning, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hello?
Hey, Helen. How are you? There we go. That's a better connection.
Yes, I'm using my cell phone. So we have AT&T service, so it's not so good.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah, every once in a while it likes to cut out there.
Okay. Well, our government's been telling us for years that there's no longer slavery in this country.
Mm-hmm.
But according to Proverbs 22, verse 7, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant or slave to the lender. Well, so our government has gotten us into slavery to our lenders. Who are we borrowing from? Who are we in slavery to? $22 trillion or whatever? This is insane.
Well, that's very true, and it's a great point. If you listen to even like Dave Ramsey, that we have actually in a lot of our different talk radio stations across the state, he talks about the same thing: is that slavery is being in debt to somebody, and having that debt is a form of slavery. And the progressives and the government, the establishment, the elites, the progressives, whatever you want to call them, they are very much in favor of slavery. The progressives and the Democrats were the ones that owned slaves back in the day, of actually physically owning them, keeping them in shackles, making them do physical labor of that sort. Today's times, they don't necessarily do that, but they do keep us in debt, which means they keep us enslaved, which is why student loans right now are the second highest debt in the entire country, right behind mortgages. It's even top credit cards, which is why the government loves to be able to give out low interest rates. The government loves to be able to play with the economy to make the cost of living lower and lower, or to make the cost of living higher, but make the wages lower and lower. We have a hard time being able to actually keep up with our bills. It's easy for us to get into a 30-year mortgage that's protected by an FHA or a government loan, because they love keeping us in debt, because then they can control you. And then when you default on those things, oh, don't worry, we'll subsidize it with people's taxpayer money, and we continue to subsidize things. You're right, $22+ trillion of a debt means that we are not a free society.
Exactly. Who are we in debt to? Who are they borrowing money from?
All over the place. I mean, they are in debt to
China?
us. We borrow $300 million a day from China in order to fund the wars and the conflicts that we've been in. We are in debt to ourselves because we do what's called quantitative easing, where the government just prints off money with nothing to back it up. They inject it into the system. They lower the value of the dollar. They increase inflation. They screw up the entire private sector. They screw up the private market and the economy, so we're in debt not only to ourselves, because we are ourselves debt, which I don't know how that can happen, but then we end up borrowing money from overseas like China, and we're in debt all over the place. We're never going to be able to get out of this.
But our government still keeps getting richer, right?
Yes, we continue to raise salaries for government employees, and we continue to spend more money, and we continue to, it just goes on down the road. Helen, you bring up some great points. I appreciate it very much. 316-721-8255. This is what we need to be concerned about. We need to be concerned about, and it goes back to Eric's call at the beginning of the show. When it comes to being involved in conflicts around the world, there was a time, if individuals remember, that we used to actually fund our own conflicts, which is why I'm in support of supporting the military and funding the military to whatever they need, because we used to fund it ourselves. If you remember, World War II is what got us out of the Great Depression. Back in the days in the early 1900s, we got out of the Great Depression because of World War II, because people went back to work. We funded it ourselves. We built the bullets. We manufactured the tanks. We built the guns. We sent them off. We had women in the factories working because the men were overseas fighting. We put our nation back to work, and we got out of debt. And we did it. And then what happened? Thanks to FDR, then we created the Great Deal and just got back into debt again. It's a really smart idea, right? This is The Voice of Reason. Hour number 2 coming up. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
Don't do drugs or don't smoke because it's really, really bad for you, but we're going to raise taxes on cigarettes in the state, so that way when you go to school this year, you're going to get brand new books because we are going to use the tax money on cigarette sales. Now, I'm not against smoking. I don't care, but the hypocrisy in the government drives me nuts. They're giving us mixed signals.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah, welcome into The Voice of Reason, broadcasting across the south central Kansas area, right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Along with cable TV on channel 2610, KGPT TV. Welcome aboard, however you may be listening, watching. We love having you along. Starting off a brand new day. It is a Thursday. The pre-Friday celebration has officially begun. Welcome into it. I know that you see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you, my friends, can continue to work hard. Carpe diem. Make it a good day. Make it productive. advance your careers every chance that you get an opportunity to do so, and then party hardy on the weekends. Welcome into it. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, a great conversation in the last hour. It was an interesting one, not one that was I had necessarily planned on going down, but I love it. And that's what this show is actually all about. Coming up in hour number 3, we're going to talk with State Senator Ty Masterson. It's been a long time since we've had him on the show. I've missed talking to him. He is the one of the more conservative individuals in our state legislature. He is the chair of the Truth Caucus in the legislature, and he is definitely in the minority in the state Senate with how much they actually agree with his ideology. So we'll talk with State Senator Ty Masterson coming up in just an hour from now. We're really looking forward to that one. Until then, it's open lines to you at 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you heard, not sure if you're aware or not, but Governor Jeff Colyer made his first statement to the joint session of the legislature last night, yesterday evening, or yesterday afternoon. I guess it was about 3 o'clock or so yesterday when he spoke to both chambers, and really his own kind of state of the state address, what his goals are, what he wants to do, what his agenda is. Now, I have some audio clips. I'll play them. They're not the best quality. We ended up recording it live from the YouTube feed that they had going on from the statement, but nonetheless, some interesting comments. Now, as you know, that Governor Jeff Colyer wanted to kind of change the tone from the governor's office. Governor Sam Brownback having that quote-unquote negative connotation from the legislature, them not caring for what he was doing for the most part, and Governor Jeff Colyer now wanting to change that tone. Is it going to work? That's the big question. Is it going to work? He's been appointed now to run it through the rest of this year. He is running for governor at the end of this year as well, along with a few other Republicans, or many other Republicans. We have a long list. But he's wanting to set a different tone. Now, I don't know what that necessarily means. And I'm excited for this. I'm excited to see what he's going to bring to the table and how much different it's going to be. He talked about transparency. He talked about accountability. He talked about wanting to work towards a better future, wanting to talk about coming together as one, which I always kind of chuckle at times. But if you're able to lead and able to bring people together, all the power to you. It just depends on where you bring them to, what point that they actually come to as they begin to work together. Is it on the progressive side or is it on the conservative side? And that's the question. And that's what we are excited to find out with Governor Jeff Colyer. When he was talking last night, he had made the comment about everybody was all concerned about what he was going to say on education. And the few little interviews that he has done talking about education funding, he had made the comment that was a little concerning, I would say, in the sense that when he was asked about it, he said, well, I don't think we need to fund more, but it sounds like the overall general opinion from the general public is we need more, and therefore we should find a way to do it. And more so of just wanting to go along to get along and wanting to provide what the general public wants. When we, as the general public, the listeners, the constituents, the voters that we are, need to, and we understand what it takes to actually take care of the public education system. And that's not necessarily more funding. But Governor Jeff Colyer had this to say yesterday.
In Kansas, we invest in our schools not because a court tells us to, but because we want to invest in our children, in our future. We invest in teachers because they invest in our kids.
There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. We invest in our education because we know how to invest in it properly. We know exactly how to take care of our children. We know, not the government, not the legislators, not the Department of Education, not even really our school board. Our local school board, I'm sorry to say, and I know that many of them may be listening to the show, I'm sorry, you are more concerned about the administrative side and pushing papers and dealing with the red tape than you are taking care of the children and the teachers in the classroom. That's just the fact of the matter. Or else, during every single year when you have gotten a 1-2% budget increase year over year, when you've gotten more money for the transportation side of education, which was against state law after the audit found out, which, by the way, they still say that they're allowed to continue to do that. We had a breaking scandal happen in our state government with educational funding, illegal money being sent to our districts for transportation against state law. And they just okayed it and said, you know what? Yeah, it's fine. You can continue to do that. And they blew past it. That was the decision based on this investigation that we did. As the federal government tries to investigate Trump for a Russian collusion, as they try to investigate the FBI for shenanigans happening with the deep state, as they investigate Hillary Clinton with the shenanigans that they pulled, we don't see a whole lot of results. We don't see justice being done. And the same happened in the state of Kansas. We had illegal money going towards the education department for transportation, quote unquote. The districts knew about it because they know that they're getting more money than what was actually on the books saying that they were getting. They've said nothing for 30 years. They did nothing about it. 20 years, 25 years, whatever the hell it is, doesn't matter. They've received more money than what they were showing on the books. They were okay with it. They didn't say a thing. It was against state law, and the legislature just came back and said, don't worry about it. You can continue to do that. You're not going to have to pay anything back. You're not going to get in trouble. It's all going to be fine. We allowed them to break the law. At the same time, we're still complaining about not having enough money. School board members, I'm sorry to tell you, you don't know what you're doing. Many of you, not all of you, many of you. Because you care more about the administrative state. You care more about getting that individual pushing papers behind the scenes rather than saying, you know what, we should probably give those teacher salaries some salary hikes to the teachers. We should probably make sure that the teachers don't have to spend their own money on the resources in the classroom to buy Kleenex bottles and boxes of crayons and dry erase markers and everything else they need for the classroom. They should probably pay that through the school district, not through their own cash. Oh yeah, kids. We need to make sure that you're taken care of and you have the resources you need in the classroom. You need new books. You need new whatever. New lab equipment. I don't know. Maybe we should focus on that instead of saying, we're going to cut home ec. We're going to cut auto shop. We're going to cut this. We're going to cut that. We don't have enough money for it. Why? Well, we actually just got a new deputy assistant, administrator, manager, superintendent, because we really, really need that. The local school board's the problem that we're actually having right now. Yes, we invest in our children. Yes, conservatives, even though that we get that bad countertone that we don't care about the children and we hate puppy dogs and children and the way that they tried to attack Governor Sam Brownback, we actually do care about our children. We invest in them the right way. We invest in them the proper way, not just throwing money at it and saying, I feel really good about myself. I feel so great. I just raised my taxes to pay for more money into the system when it's not doing any good. Governor Colyer laid out his plan for what he wants to see in education this year.
Governor Bob Dockey, Governor Robert Bennett, Governor John Carlin, Governor Mike Hayden, Governor Joan Finney, Governor Bill Graves, Governor Kathleen Sebelius, Governor Mark Parkinson, Governor Sam Brownback, and Governor Jeff Colyer. The last 10 governors of Kansas, 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, 50 years and counting. That's longer than the Cold War. All 10 governors have had the specter of education lawsuits overshadowing education. This must end now.
Now, that's almost the same as what Governor Brownback had mentioned in the State of the State when he advocated for the constitutional amendment to hold the Supreme Court accountable.
Additionally, we must stop the never-ending cycle of litigation on school finance. I urge the legislature to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot this year addressing our school finance system. The people need to be heard on this central issue of state government.
And many individuals actually said that they thought the State of the State address by Governor Sam Brownback was actually, in many perspectives, an opinion and a view from Governor Colyer because they knew the transition was going to be happening. So it was more of the mindset of Governor Colyer at that time as opposed to Governor Sam Brownback. So with Governor Colyer coming out and saying that the 50 years of litigation from the Supreme Court on education, that must end. It must not be a dark cloud over us year over year over year and continue to be decade for decade for decade, and that we need to stop this now. I totally agree, and maybe that means in his mind, and because I didn't hear him come out right out and say it in this speech, but by default means that we need to address it, which means we need to address the Supreme Court and that they need to create some type of constitutional amendment and to end the litigation reform happening, asking for more money every single year. Then he laid out his plan on exactly what he would sign once the legislature gets in gear.
I will offer a framework that I hope you can see fit to support to solve the issue. First, we must keep our schools open. Second,
let's stop right there. We must keep our schools open. I don't see a problem with that at all. We should keep our schools open. There's no reason why they should shut down. The Supreme Court, the Kansas Supreme Court, and their abuse of power and the tyrants that they are in the black robes sitting on the courts have threatened to shut down the schools, saying that if you're not getting an adequate funding of schools, then we'd rather shut you down and get no education than the little bit of education you're actually getting right now. That's the position that they have taken, not the legislature, the Supreme Court. Now, first off, again, they have no control over the budget because the Congress, the House, has actually the power of the purse. The Supreme Court has no influence over the power of the purse at all. They're not supposed to. That's the whole point of the abuse of power. Second off, even if they wanted to, it goes through the Treasury Department with the state treasurer signing the checks for the school districts, which means they would have to get to them, and they don't even communicate. The Supreme Court has no way of bullying the state treasurer, says, don't sign that check to the schools right now of what you're sending them because we want them to receive nothing as opposed to what they're getting right now. And that's been the position of the Supreme Court for a really, really long time. But yet, how are they going to shut down the schools? They can threaten it. And even if they do somehow bully the state treasurer, or they get the state National Guard to come in and come to the schools and literally stand there and block people from getting into the doors, then they will look in the wrong. They will look bad. They will hurt their cause. The schools, I assure you, will not and cannot shut down. The only way it would shut down is if the legislature says, yeah, you know what, we're not going to allot them any money in our budget in any way, shape, or form. Therefore, the state treasurer cannot sign the checks, and that's not going to happen. And if they do, it would be the Democrats doing that and the progressives, not the Republicans, because the Democrats are the ones advocating for more money and just saying, oh, let's blindly go along with the more dictators. Again, they told us that we need more money. Let's find more money. Oh, look at this. It's a really bad thing. We need to take care of our kids, and the kids are suffering. The Supreme Court told us we need more money. Let's give them more money. So the schools won't shut down, and I agree with Governor Colyer. They cannot shut down because they will not shut down because constitutionally there's no way for them to really shut down.
we need a definitive solution that ends the school finance lawsuits for good. Increased investments in K-12 education must come through a phased-in approach that doesn't increase the tax burden on Kansas families and ensures schools can effectively allocate any new funds they receive.
Let's stop right there again. That's point number 3 with slowly integrating the more money in, which is, again, why individuals thought the State of the State address by Governor Sam Brownback was the plan of Governor Jeff Colyer. When Governor Brownback announced that he wanted to include $600 million into the education system, everybody's flags went up. Wait a second, what are you talking about? What are you talking about, $600 million? And then what did he say? Phasing it in over the next 5 years. Phasing in the $600 million over the next 5 years. That's exactly what Governor Colyer just talked about. Phasing in the money. If we are going to phase in money, phase it in over a long-term period. Therefore, our taxes do not need to go up because we'll continue to increase the spending as the economy begins to grow. The problem with that is that if the economy doesn't grow as it hasn't for the last few years, to the point that we need it to be, not saying that it hasn't grown, but not grown as quickly as we need it to be, then we'd be in more of a predicament as we are right now.
And lastly, and most importantly, we must insist on accountability and improved outcomes. I will sign school finance legislation that meets these objectives.
316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK from the joint session address from Governor Jeff Colyer. I'm excited to see what his administration is going to do for the next few months going into the election for the governor's race in November. But until then, what do you think of his statement so far from what you've heard? Did you listen to it yesterday live? Did you hear more clips of it? We'll play some more when we come back as well. But your thoughts on what you want to see versus what you expect to see, and maybe those are one and the same thing, from Governor Jeff Colyer. Lots to get to today. 316-721-8255. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Some in politics, leadership is about being a bully or being the loudest, shrillest voice in the room. To others, staking out a position, they don't ever want to compromise. They're never going to compromise. To me, leadership is about setting a vision and bringing people together to achieve common goals. And we're going to rely on principles. And as a former legislator, I know that you don't appreciate being told what to do by a governor or anyone else for that matter. And I think the reaction to the recent State of the State address is plenty evidence of that.
That was Governor Jeff Colyer with his statement to the joint session yesterday afternoon, talking about leadership wanting to work together and get some things done. That sounds nice, doesn't it? Can we do it? That's the question. They're advocating for that at the federal level as well. Speaker Paul Ryan at the federal level said that the only way he'd take the leadership position in the Speaker of the House position is if we were able to unite and come together as one and sing Kumbaya and Hunky Dory. And there's no problem with that. The problem is that you're right. We have a certain set of principles, and those principles conflict sometimes. And they conflict in legislation because those principles, those values, those morals that we hold to each other are different, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately, because we like diversity. At the same time, though, some of them, they're a little more extreme. And when they say that we're not going to be happy unless we completely fund all healthcare through government programs, then we have a bit of a problem, don't we? 316-721-8255. We got about a minute before the bottom of the hour. Let's go take a break here, shall we? Or take a phone call. Good morning. What's your name?
David.
David, good morning, sir. How are you?
Yeah, good. Real briefly, we spent $600 million in new sales tax a couple of years ago and then $1.2 billion last year. I don't see the point in another $600 million. If they really want to do it, we're spending $14,000 a kid on public schools. You can do it for 6 or 7 on private. Mm-hmm. We need to have real school choice because we're just taking money away from mental health. We're taking money away from prisons. We're taking money from everything except education. It's overfunded, not underfunded.
No doubt. No doubt. Maybe we should raise cigarette sales taxes to be able to give more money towards schools. That's what we should do.
Absolutely. Let's promote smoking.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's what I'm saying. I love it, David. I appreciate it, my friend. That's what we should do. Everybody go out, buy a pack of cigarettes, and say, I want this sales tax money to be donated towards the Children's Fund for Education to buy new books. Then you can tell the kids, don't smoke, but you know what? I bought you that book with my pack of cigarettes, and I got lung cancer because of it. Then we can expand Medicaid programs in order to take care of your lung cancer, funded by the sales tax of cigarettes.
Everybody just have a good time.
Wichita's fastest growing radio show. You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Yeah, welcome back into The Voice of Reason, making it happen today on a Thursday. Welcome aboard. It is the fastest growing show all across the Mid-America region, broadcasting here on KQAM, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, along with KGPT TV, channel 2610. You can check it out there as well, plus the rerun of the show every evening from 6 to 9 o'clock at night. Yes, you can hear it in the evening as well. Kind of awesome, right? Just saying. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Your thoughts on Governor Jeff Colyer's statements on what he wants to see from the legislature, the way we need to band together and work together moving forward, the way we need to have leaders. And that is, I'm glad he said that, too. I'm really glad he mentioned that, the fact that we need to lead. You're an elected official for a reason. You need to lead. You don't need to govern because that's controlling things, but you need to lead. You need to be a leader. You need to have people look up to you and say, you are doing a great job because you're fighting the fight. You're standing on what's right. You know exactly what's going on. You're going to fight, and you're not going to waver. That does not mean you don't need to compromise per se, but we need to remember what the real definition of compromise actually is. But when it comes to education funding, sounds like that's what we need to do.
In Kansas, we invest in our schools not because a court tells us to, but because we want to invest in our children, in our future. We invest in teachers because They invest in our kids.
That's exactly right. We don't do it because the Supreme Court says, we need more money, baby. Show me the money. Where's the more? We need more funding. This has been going on for the last 50 years. We need more money. You're going to provide more money. When the bully gets whatever they want to for the last 50 years, they're going to continue on to be a bully until someone finally stands up and says, yeah, you know what? Not going to happen anymore. We're going to draw the line in the sand. And what are you going to do about it? Here's the question, and I don't get it. And maybe a legislature that's listening right now could chime in on this. What could they do? What could they possibly do if we said, no, you're not going to get more funding? No, this falls on the responsibility and the shoulders of the local school board. We're providing you the cash. We're giving you the money, and you need to be the responsible individual delegating the money to the appropriate places. That's it. End of story. We have nothing more to do with it from the state government level. It is up to you as the local school board that decides the salaries, that decides the spending, that decides the maintenance of the school buildings, that decides the expansion, that decides the athletic department, that does whatever. You're not there to rubber stamp what the superintendent tells you to do. You're there, just as you are kind of a separation of powers in the government, you're there to decide what the budget's responsibility is for, where the money's going to go. The government does not do that. We invest in it because, yes, we want to take care of our children, not because of the Supreme Court. So if you're an elected official, maybe a former elected official, somebody that understands that, what could they possibly do if we say, no, we're not giving you a single penny more? You're getting what you're getting right now. We'll give you a little bit of a boost because we've always given you a boost, 1-2% over the last 10 years, every single year. What else are you going to do? Are you going to shut down the schools? Yeah, how are you going to do that? Good luck with that. You're going to throw us into a constitutional crisis? Good. Shut down the government. States can shut down their governments. It happens all the time. Let's figure this out. Let's hash it out, because no more are you going to push us around. And it's about time that we actually make that happen. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Let's go to the phones. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, sir. This is Drew.
Drew, how are you, sir?
I'm outstanding.
Good.
Hey, I had 2 points here, and the second one's kind of crunchy, but it's very important, so I want to make sure you get them.
Okay.
Yeah, first one. On the terms of leadership, what we need are servant leaders.
Yes.
And this is important because our politicians are not leaders. That, leadership is not a positional thing. You don't get it just by showing up, okay? And so we need to have politicians who understand the concept of servant leadership.
Well, exactly. I mean, leaders in the terms of, as we try to explain, is people saying, you know what, they stand on their principles. They're not going to waver. They stand on virtue. They're not going to be bought off. They're not going to be corrupted. They're not going to be wavering. They're not going to just go with the breeze. They are a leader for the idea that we want to see. We want them to represent us in government, because that's the whole purpose of them being there. They're representing us. And if they don't actually go up and be a leader for people to look up to them and say, what's going on and how are you representing us in the best way you can? If people aren't feeling that, then they don't need to be there.
And in the upcoming election, we need to use the primary process to say, what are your absolutes? What are your points that you absolutely stand on, that you're not going to compromise on, that you're going to say, look, politics is you come to my side because I can enunciate my ideas better.
Exactly.
So we need to take that responsibility as the voter. Now, let's talk about schools for just a minute, because this is a critical point. We have a cycle in our society where we see influences come and go, and what we're seeing right now is that the millennial generation has come along, and they were by and large mollycoddled. The government and the school system came along and took a lot of the emphasis and drive out of them. They don't want to go out and get houses. They don't want to make businesses. They want to be good little servant citizens. And I'm making a very broad brush statement there, and I know that it's can be argued, but the point that they're showing is, by and large, that is the momentum of that generation.
Well, that's that part of the activist group of that. I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, I'm part of that millennial generation, and I've seen it. You're absolutely right, and I poke fun of that all the time, because there is that very loud, obnoxious activist side of the millennial generation that You're right. They want to be those servants. They're confused. They want government to take care of them, but yet they don't want the government to grow. They want to take care of people because they're all emotional, but at the same time, I don't understand a lot of where they come from sometimes.
Well, 30 years before this, when the 60s generation came around, before the millennials, 30 years before them, when the 60s generation came around, they still had the generation from the 40s and the 50s to kind of act like the bumper guards to keep them from going too far off. Well, when we came along with Generation X didn't develop good leadership, and we didn't have...
No, they were the party generation.
We were the innovators, and so what we did is we said, well, what can we do? Where's the limits at? And so we didn't provide good bumpers for this millennial generation. That means that the current generation right now that's coming out of school, the Gen Zs, these are the folks who grew up in a totally different world than the millennials. They grew up after 9/11. They found out the world is not a nice, safe place, and you don't get participation awards. So here is why this is critical to the schools right now. The folks who are in college, the teachers in college, the folks who are doing, Berkeley at the Plains up in Lawrence, the ones out in Dodge and Hayes and so forth, even here in Wichita, they're the ones who are in place trying to go ahead and perpetuate this same stuff that we see in the papers and make fun of, that they're trying to take Gen Z and change them from being the hero generation to being the entitled generation like their parents were. In the high schools, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing them disregard history. We're seeing them disregard government, disregard whatever. What we need to do at this point, and this is the critical, we're at the fulcrum point, we need our legislature to go to the state school board, to go to the Board of Regents, and we need them to make a clear and unequivocal statement. This is a state operation. This is not your private fiefdoms. These are state colleges, state high schools, and we need to tell some of these high schools, look, we gave you back more local control. You abused it. Now we're taking some back.
Wow.
And we need to save Generation Z because they're the hero generation that's going to bring us out of where we're at now.
Well, they
and
can
if we
fix...
don't save them, we're going to lose a lot.
Well, that's very true. You're right. I appreciate it. You're right. I mean, they're the generation that's going to fix what my generation screwed up. That's a really good point. I appreciate it. And the way that they understand to control them is by that education, which is why we need to repeal Common Core, which is why we need to create a successful educational program, which is why we need to have them understand what education is. And when we focus on the wrong things like the administrative side, then we're losing that. We're losing it. When we see that, we've regurgitated the numbers over and over and over again on this show of the fact that only 7, 8, 15% of our juniors are actually college prep ready, when we actually only have a 7 or 8% success rate on SAT and ACT scores at a junior level, when we're not college prepped, when we don't have trade schools, when we're not teaching them trades, when we're not teaching them what they need to learn for life lessons. They won't do it. They can be the saving grace generation, but unless they actually understand the tools on how to utilize that, they don't know. It's like the superhero that has the power that has no idea how to use the power. Guess what? If you don't know how to use the power, then your power is essentially useless because you're not able to use it at all. You don't know how to control it. You don't know how to strengthen it. You don't know how to practice it. You don't know how to use that. It's the same with the knowledge of the young generation. They've come out and they said that the young generation in school right now is probably going to be more conservative than the most conservative generation since World War II. Because after the junk that my generation, the millennials, wanted to try and say that there's no such thing as a gender because you can choose your gender however you want to. Saying that words hurt and therefore we need to have trigger warnings. Saying that we need to have our adult coloring books and our therapy animals because we really feel bad after an election because it broke our hearts and that the end of the world's going to happen. My generation has messed up a lot to where we don't know any absolutes anymore. Are you a boy or a girl? I don't know. We're just going to take the gender off of the birth certificate because we want them to choose. What? Okay. That's what we've come to. We've ignored basic common sense natural biology. We've ignored basic common sense life lessons. Don't eat Tide Pods. I saw a story on social media this morning that said that a state legislature, I don't even remember what state legislatures are looking to try and force Tide to change the way the Tide Pod is made so it doesn't look as appetizing. That's where we're at in society. We have created legislation forcing a private company to change the way that they actually create their product so that way it doesn't look appetizing to try and eat it. Because we're too stupid to understand that that's chemicals and that can harm you. That's where we're at today. No personal responsibility. Don't tell the young kids, hey, if you eat this, you're eating Clorox and you're probably going to get really sick and die. Instead, we're saying, nah, you know what, Tide, you probably need to make it less appealing. You shouldn't have the little swirls of the bright colors on top of it to make it looks like fruit or it looks like a Kool-Aid or something, and therefore, it doesn't look like we should eat it. You should make it really gross looking. That's where we're at today because we don't have the common sense, because we don't teach common sense anymore. We don't teach reason anymore. And then all they want to do is throw money at a school system that does not teach the things that we need to be taught. 316-728-25. For example, I saw the story and I've been wanting to comment on this. This is perfect to it. The legislature is looking at trying to create legislation to make a curriculum for schools that want to teach gun safety, which is a great thing. Because we're actually talking about gun safety. We want to create a course to allow the education of gun safety based on the NRA standards from the National Riflemen's Association. What's wrong with that? We have a standard. We want to teach the kids gun safety so that way they're not scared of guns because they understand the guns. And it's the Eddie's Eagle Gun Safe program that the NRA has, talking about if you're a young kid, how to go and get a parent and tell them that there's a gun. If you're a middle school age kid, or older, you know how to clean the gun. You know how to store it safely. You know how to fire it safely. You know that you're not supposed to point it at anybody, whether it's loaded or not loaded. All the basics of how a firearm works. That's what we should be teaching. And you know what the argument was against it? Not the fact that, we're educating our youth how to use guns and we're trying to teach them to be the next fascist soldiers, which I'm sure came up to some degree. But there were advocates against it saying we shouldn't do that because we shouldn't have a standardized Common Core curriculum on gun safety. I promise, this is off Cake TV. Most lawmakers on Tuesday, when they debated this bill, providing gun safety training to students, most lawmakers supported it, but some argue that requiring a particular curriculum course would represent an overreach by state government into decisions that should be made by local school boards. Are you kidding me? Please tell me you're joking. The same ones that advocate for Common Core coming from not the local school boards, but from the federal government. From the same individuals that advocate at the state level to have a Common Core curriculum that takes the common sense out of basic math and English and writing. The same ones that want a standardized curriculum across the board, they're the ones now coming out and saying, we shouldn't have a statewide curriculum on gun training. It should be up to the local school boards to set that curriculum. This is coming from, with something like gun safety, you think you would go to the experts like the NRA, who handles guns on a regular basis, who has curriculums, who have individuals that specialize in that industry, kind of like a trade school. The trade school, when you go to a trade school, I went to the trade school for radio. All of my instructors and professors were individuals working in the industry, neither TV or radio. They know the industry because you intern for them. They teach you because they take you to work with them and actually train you. You do hands-on work. That's the purpose of a trade school. When you do something like such an isolated industry like guns and gun training and gun curriculums, you would think you would go to the curriculum where the experts have done that. Not bureaucrats or politicians setting you how to do math and how to break it down into a half-page problem to do a simple multiplication problem. But no, we want Common Core, we just don't want Common Core for guns. Give me a break. We can't even agree on that. We talk about leadership and talking about trying to unite one another the way Governor Colyer tried to advocate for. We can't even come to the agreement that a particular curriculum on gun safety is good because the NRA is a terrible organization, therefore we shouldn't support it. 316-728-2555. Let's take a phone call. Good morning. What's your name?
It's Wallace.
Wallace, good morning, sir. How are you?
Well, I was feeling better until I ate a Tide Pod.
Well, it does look very fruitful, so I'm sure that it tasted delicious.
Yeah, I tweeted something out on this a while back, and it was like, you know, this is again, it's like what Drew said. These kids are a bunch of, you know, not every one of them, but a lot of them, they're not held responsible. Even these kids don't consider themselves to be adults now. They did a survey until age 24.
No, they don't even. No, my generation, they don't consider themselves adults until the age of 30.
You know, well, and you know what? If that's true, then maybe we need to look at changing, you know, voting laws. Because I got to tell you, when you have, you know, I got a 19 and a 20-year-old, and they work, you know, various hours, and they pay, some tax, but they have no obligations. Mom, dad, they pay for everything.
Sure.
And so at the end of the day, there's no consequence when they look at their paycheck and they get it. It's, well, this is what I get to spend on me. But when they start paying their cell phone and their health insurance,
that changes them pretty
car
quick.
Insurance, yeah, and then they look at the end of the paycheck and they're like, this is all I have left to eat on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this tax thing really kind of sucks. And then all of a sudden, now they have some responsibility, some obligations, some skin in the game.
Sure.
But you were talking about the education thing earlier, and what is it? It's a 72-1113. It's Kansas compulsory education law, and basically says if your kids if they don't get to school and get educated, that they can be that a prosecution can occur, and that's handled by law enforcement. So my question is if the parents are paying taxes for the schools, the legislature is appropriating money, the only people stopping it would be the Supreme Court. They should be charged with however many hundreds of thousands of, and it is considered child neglect not to send your child to school.
Sure.
Go have the district attorney or the attorney general or whoever go in and prosecute the Supreme Court. Say, look, you guys shuttered the school. You're in violation of the law times 500,000 times. You're going to prison for the rest of your life.
That's a good
now,
point.
Shut the hell up. Yeah, and that's the law. They wrote the. They can't change
and that's
it.
what we can come across as. You're right. I mean, if they're going to try and shut it down, which they can't in the first place, as I mentioned, but if they do try and do it, then you're right. Then you know what? You were charging the Supreme Court with the neglect of children because they're keeping them from being able to go to school. Well, also, I hate to cut you off, my friend. I'm way late on a break. I got to take one, but you're absolutely right. That's a good point to do it, and we can use that. If you're going to neglect our children in that sense, then you know what? We're going to come after you tenfold than what you're trying to do with our education. Lots more coming up. Stay here.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Went a little long in that last segment. That's all right. We appreciate all the phone calls. Got some more on the line. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, hour number 3, really excited. State Senator Ty Masterson. It's been a while since we've chatted with him. We'll see what's going on in the legislative session. We'll also talk with him on some of the big things happening. The speech from Governor Jeff Colyer yesterday. It's State Senator Ty Masterson. When we come back, the man himself. We'll talk about that and so much more in hour number 3. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. Hour number 3 of The Voice of Reason coming up in just a minute. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
Don't do drugs or don't smoke because it's really, really bad for you. But we're going to raise taxes on cigarettes in the state. So that way, when you go to school this year, you're going to get brand new books because we are going to use the tax money on cigarette sales. Now, I'm not against smoking. I don't care. But the hypocrisy in the government drives me nuts. They're giving us mixed signals.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. Hour number 3 of the Voice of Reason, broadcasting all across the South Central Kansas area and really all over the world. On the Facebook Live feed, hailing on the Big Talker 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, along with on cable TV, channel 2610 on KGPT TV. Welcome aboard. Good morning to you wherever and however you may be listening and watching. Welcome to it. It's a Thursday. The pre-Friday celebration has begun, my friends, and no government shutdown tomorrow. I feel a little bummed about that. I kind of wanted to see it. I know they panicked. Oh, terrible. Government shutdown. End of the world was going to happen, but yet they extended the budget for 2 years out. They increased it by $300 billion at the federal level, and there we go. We get to see the government hold our hand for another 2 years. Wonderful. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, I'm really excited. Let's get to our next guest as we talk about the legislative issues. Last hour, we aired some of the clips, and I have more we'll play a little bit later as well. But from Governor Jeff Colyer, as he made his first joint session meeting and speech to both chambers yesterday afternoon, talking about what his view is, what he wants to see, the unity of what he wants to see in our state legislature. Will it happen is the big question. So far, we've heard little about education funding other than the investigation on the funding that was sent illegally to the districts on transportation. And then we find out that, you know what, we're not going to get in trouble for that. It's okay. You can keep it. We're not going to make you pay it back. We're not going to stop anything. We're not going to get anybody in any trouble. And whatever. Investigation, illegal spending, whatever. It went to the cause that we wanted to go to anyway. So we'll talk about that and more, but I'm really excited. He's also the chair of the Truth Caucus in the legislature, State Senator Ty Masterson, on the line with us. Great friend of the show, great personal friend, back on here. It's been a while since we've chatted. Ty, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me back on, Andy.
Hey, it's always great to talk to you, sir. You guys, it's so funny. It's been so slow moving. It's week number 3 now in the legislative session for you guys. You've heard the governor's speech, the State of the State address that happened the first week, the transition that just happened with Governor Jeff Colyer. Now, other than the Second Amendment, which I was a bit shocked they even brought up during an election year to try and repeal carry on campus, we really haven't heard anything substantial coming out of the legislature yet.
Yeah, and I don't think you will. We're in this bit of a hurry up and wait mode from the leader's perspective, waiting on this out-of-state, independent study on K-12 that they're hoping will give them the ability to, pull back, or at least not add. We've added hundreds of millions to K-12, and they're hoping it'll give them a reason not to add the additional money. But yeah, outside of that, that's really all that's been taken up from serious business is the gun issue, and it's just been in the House. We just received that bill over from the House this last week.
I don't understand why they went to the guns. And let's talk about that first before we move on. But first off, we saw it sounded really good at first. They said, oh, look, state reciprocity. You can go to other states and carry your firearm. The people can come to the state of Kansas and carry their firearms. It's going to be great. We're going to have state reciprocity while the federal government's talking about national reciprocity. We can have state reciprocity. Then they build on and top of it and on top of it and say, let's extend it down to 18 years old and start getting a permit. Then we can start moving towards more individuals getting permits instead of the constitutional carry. Then we can start doing the complete repealing of carry on campus, and to the point to where I didn't even recognize it as a pro Second Amendment bill.
Yeah. But if you were up here and saw what really controls our legislature, it wouldn't surprise you at all. The majority is on the left, and they're looking for every cracked open door to go the other direction, and doing everything from those types of amendments on gun bills, even in committee, trying to pull out unique rules and overrun, people that are in control of committee to get their agenda done. So it's really not surprising. I was glad to see efforts done on the Second Amendment, but sure it wasn't surprising that you'd have the left stand up and try to take it the other direction.
But even during an election year, I mean, we had in the House, at least, when they voted on this, 17 out of the 53 that voted for the bill were Republicans, which is not going to do well and bode well with the NRA rating for them when they try and go back to their constituents and say, hey, please reelect me because I'm going to support your Second Amendment rights.
Actually, there's such a level of boldness up here by the left. It's interesting. A lot of these people are brand new, and they haven't been held accountable yet for their votes, right? A lot of those people that come in are relatively new or in very liberal districts. So I was actually glad to see some of them cast an honest vote, right? There are those that won't cast it in an election year, even though that's who they really are. So I hope there's a lot of education done in these districts in the 2018 elections, and you see a different House.
Sure. Well, on the Senate side, since, we talked to the House members quite a bit, but you coming from the Senate side, this bill could potentially go somewhere, do something on the Senate side. Is there an opportunity to try and recraft it and make it more basic of just allowing state reciprocity? Could we see something positive come out of this in the end?
Yes. So the short answer to that is it'll actually get assigned to Federal and State Affairs. It's a committee I'm on. One of the few committees that has it almost straight even, but with the chairman, we will strip that amendment out, and then the trick will be, can we get it off our floor? Because the Senate's also a a left-leaning body at this point. So, but there might be some things since it's passed the House already. It's what you call up here in the wonky world conferenceable. So I think in the end you'll see something that comes off the end that doesn't have that amendment in it.
Gotcha. Go along with that. Before we move on from the Second Amendment, we did see the bill coming from the House side as well, talking about gun courses and gun safety courses in schools. And I had laughed out loud when I was reading the story, where the only opposition that I've heard so far was not the fact that we're trying to train little Nazi soldiers to be able to carry guns as kids, but the fact that they don't want a common core curriculum on guns coming from the state level as opposed to having the curriculum set by the local school boards.
Right, which it shows you the hypocrisy, right? Those are the same individuals that want the mandated curriculum coming down on other subject matters, including other questionable matters, like sexual education, things like that. They want it, but when it comes to guns, we can't touch that.
No, sure, yeah, we can't touch that at all. What's your take on yesterday? Governor Jeff Colyer spoke on what he saw as what he wanted to see for education spending. He had talked about, and really, I saw a lot of correlation between his speech yesterday and the State of the State address from Governor Sam Brownback with the phasing in of educational money over a span of time, trying to set, hopefully, potentially an amendment to try and hold the Supreme Court at bay when it comes to education finance so we don't have any more litigation, wanting to try and work together. What do you think so far of the transition between one governor to the next and how that may play out with some legislation getting to the governor's desk this year?
Well, what's going to be really interesting is, since it is an election year, and he's choosing to run. There's a bit of a test drive here with him as a governor. So it'll be interesting to see how he tries to separate himself and create it. So I really don't know. I did like the strong parts of that speech where, we've been doing this litigation for 50 years. He named the past governors and it must stop. So that was strong. I wish he'd have stayed there. And he made the comment, no new taxes, but how incompetent would we have to be to have to raise taxes again after that massive retroactive thing they did last year? But so there was some strong. I was not happy with even the phasing. The answer to education is school choice in the end. And he didn't have any comments on that. But I do like that he didn't try to prescribe a number, and say, hey, we need to put X more. They haven't even absorbed the, depending how you calculate, the $300 to $500 million that's been put in already. They're just stacking up their balances.
Sure. No doubt. When it comes to, the funds you mentioned, the taxes, I don't see anybody as of yet talking about raising taxes. I did see, ironically, a Democrat try and propose lowering sales tax rates on food by 2% over the next couple of years, which is extremely ironic after advocating for the largest tax increase in state history, retroactively, mind you. I don't see that going anywhere. Do you see any change in tax rates up or down this session?
I really don't. I think you'll see lots of talk about it, particularly from the left, and particularly from those that actually voted for that massive retroactive piece last year. They'll start coming out with little things like that. We need to, tweak this rate or tweak that because they're going to try to pretend they're, for lowering taxes for the people for the election year. That's just right. So, but in the end, I don't. Since one, it is an election year. Two, I just can't imagine. I keep using the word, how incompetent our budget committees would have to be to put a budget out that would require increased taxes after what we've already done.
Mm-hmm. So, well, and this year,
I don't think you will.
Sure. Well, and this year we're looking at, potentially massive amounts of new spending. We're looking at the potential $600 million to, I've even heard up to $1.5 billion for additional education funding. If we end up expanding Medicaid, which I've gone to a lot of the public forums and heard a lot of individuals, and there's a huge movement to push for the Medicaid expansion that could cost up to $200 million, $2 billion for the state. We hear about the corrections facilities. We hear about the judicial branch for $20+ million for more salary hikes there. If we look at all of the spending that they want to do, how could we not raise taxes? How much money from your side, looking at it from the inside there, are they looking at potentially raising for spending this year?
Yeah, that's why, I don't think this year I could see this group putting a budget out that, although it somewhat on paper balanced this year, would require increases in the out years, right? Mm-hmm. They're real good at putting these demands out that then become entitled, and then you can't ever pull them back, and then you get the result of higher taxes. So I could see a budget postured that way, but I don't think you'll see a change in any of the rates. There will be all of these pushes, there'll be pushes for Medicaid expansion, just because they have the ideological majority in both chambers. So you'll see those efforts. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how new Governor Colyer handles some of that if they're to make it through.
Sure. I've asked this to everybody, and so far they're not sure because, I mean, Governor Colyer, I'm excited to see what he does. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do as the governor, but he's been kind of an unknown on some issues, and one of them being Medicaid expansion, just because of the fact that he's crafted himself CanCare and the privatized program of CanCare. So from your perspective, from the little bit that you know about him, if that does get to his desk, would he sign an expansion or would he veto something like that?
I think the simple answer, I think he would veto that right now. He understands. I have had conversations with him to the point he understands the tremendous cost that would put on us. And, people they project like it's this population, but it's really the able-bodied population they're talking about. He does understand the cost. So I think he would veto it. The weak point there, if there was a strong work requirement or something like that put in it, I could see him getting weak on that decision.
Interesting. Well, hopefully he does stay steadfast. And I tell you what, I know that you mentioned that there is a progressive majority in both chambers right now, and they're kind of pushing that agenda. But I have to say, I mean, in your chair of the Truth Caucus up there, I've heard that your guys' numbers have grown dramatically quite a bit when it comes to the Truth Caucus, to Republicans joining the conservative movement and actually wanting to stand up to this. So that's at least some positive news, right?
Oh, yeah, it's real positive. Actually, when we started out this year, I started it last year, trying to fight against the big electronic tax deal, and we actually formed our own C4, became a lot more organized this year, went into recruiting. At first, I thought I might have some troubles recruiting, quantity. I had announced at our reception last Monday that hey, the recruitment drive's over. This thing's getting too big, in the sense that we still want to be able. We don't want to get. You want to be as big as you can get as a caucus, but not so watered down you ever can't stand for anything. Right? That's the thing. We have, if 4/5 of us decide that an issue is so important that we'd like to vote together, it's kind of a commitment to vote together. So that's kind of the strength of the caucus. We do have 25% of the Senate, a little over that in the House, and we're still taking new members. We're just not out. I'm not out knocking on doors recruiting people to be part of the group. But, no, it's good. It's a good response, but that's also what happens when you're a minority, right? Even though we're in the majority party, we're the ideological minority, so that's the nature of things. You tend to try to group together, which has been positive.
Well, and the crazy thing about that is it's great to have the Truth Caucus, and it's fantastic that people are wanting to join that, and that you don't even need to go and PR to try and get people to join. But that whole, like you mentioned, having a unified message of an ideology, and if 4/5 of the people want to do it, then that's how you kind of vote. That's supposed to be what the party does in the first place. The fact that we've even gone away from the party and we have to even marginalize ourselves within a party to have a caucus of an ideology within a party, to me, that kind of takes away the whole purpose of having the party in the first place.
Oh, you nailed it. I almost had called it the Republican platform caucus, right? We just want to stick to the platform. It is who we're supposed to be. And it's tragic that we actually operate almost like a shadow leadership, right? We put out talking points and gel the messages so our conservative friends have ammunition going into these battles, because it's not in the mainstream debate.
That's sad. Okay. The Truth Caucus sending out their talking memo. Ooh, does this correlate with the Republican Party, or is the Republican Party going to? I mean, it's sad that we're in that position. It really is. State Senator.
If you look at the principles of the Truth Caucus, they're almost identical to that of the platform.
The platform of the Republicans. Party. Yeah, they just refuse to acknowledge it. Yeah, when you have Republicans, I mean, we've read the Freedom Index score ratings for some of the legislative officials up there, and the two worst ones, according to the ratings from a couple of years, are Republicans, even more so than Democrats.
Yes, and that is so true. I mean, we had a resolution yesterday on the dangers of pornography, and you had a couple Republicans vote against it. Like voting for pornography. I mean, what in the world?
Which again, I mean, is that something to address? I mean, between the cigarette sales tax increase, because and I had a little fun with that a couple of days ago, wanting to raise sales tax on cigarettes to be able to pay for new schools, and wanting to expand Medicaid through the funds of the sales tax on cigarettes to take care of people when they get their lung cancer, and then stuff with like pornography. I mean, it's important things, but at the same time, the meat and potato of what we're supposed to be focused on right now is not being addressed. I fear that, like the end of the session last year when we had the Fast and Furious go into the special session, got to get it done or else we're going to waste more money as a state. That's what's going to happen this year again when it comes to the final decision on education.
that's exactly what's going to happen this year, and you can just see it coming from a mile away this year, waiting on this study to come in. Then we're going to be knocking towards the turnaround and the end of regular session, and but that's how it's been operated. Leadership has not been visionary and creating, getting a vision driven by the caucus. It's reactionary, and then you pick off the weak and get them to vote in ways they wouldn't want to vote in order to shut things down. And we're headed for that type of a train, depending on what that study comes back like. It'll all hit the fan then.
Unbelievable. We got just about a minute left. State Senator Ty Masterson with us here, but what's the next step? What do you see going through the committees right now? Do you see anything major coming out that we should be focused on as the voters and the constituents right now?
There is really nothing coming through the committees right now other than the Second Amendment issues of major significance. There's a lot of little tic-tac things. Well, then there are the subversive things, like there's Medicaid expansion type bills trying to work there where they're trying to get through. Those are the things that the public should be watching.
Unbelievable.
It won't hit the fan until education.
Until the education, exactly. I got to ask you this one last question, too. The investigation that happened with the Department of Education in the illegal funds going toward the transportation in education, where is that? I've heard the story briefly about the fact that we're not going to have the districts pay it back. We're going to continue to allow it to continue the way it's been. So it sounds like this investigation's almost dead and gone, and that we're just going to allow the illegal expenditures to continue to happen.
What is absolutely crazy about that is the law. The current law is absolutely clear that if a district has received overpayment, they shall remit a check back. That's what the law is. And now it's been shown that there was, the calculations were incorrect. They were inflated. And it's like $45 million in excess over the last 5 years. Even if you gave them a statute of limitations a year or two, there would be some millions of dollars that would have to be cut back from the overappropriation. And that's the law. I know the state board, the state board, which, by the way, is elected. I wish we had more light on those offices, has decided they're not going to do anything about it.
They're not going to enforce it.
Right.
Unbelievable. State Senator Ty Masterson, what a great job you guys are doing. Keep up the good fight. The Truth Caucus is growing, which is such an encouraging thing. Hopefully that'll resonate into the elections come the midterms, and then we can start changing the tide just a little bit up there, not referencing the Tide Pods, which students should not be eating because they're stupid.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. State Senator Ty Masterson there. We'll get him back on the show again real soon. Your thoughts and calls when we come back. We'll open up lines to you. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Well, we went a little long in that last segment. That's all right. Thanks again to State Senator Ty Masterson. Such great information, such a great guy, advancing conservatism the right way. We'll talk with him again on the show very soon. Bottom of the hour news coming up when we come back. We'll open up lines to you as we wrap up the show today. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Reason in the world of politics.
But if you're really angry, why in the first place are you not frustrated and angry to the fact that you have to spend $250 to $600 of your own cash to be able to provide resources in the classroom?
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Wrapping up the show today, broadcasting right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Along with KGPT TV, channel 2610. Both here live right now as we're doing it, along with a replay of it right here on KGPT on channel 2610 from 6 to 9 in the evening. You can always catch the information. We try and give you the info so you can make the right decision. And something he said, State Senator Ty Masterson, again, great individual, great friend of the show, great personal friend, great individual, advancing conservatism. What a great guy he is. And I tell you what, he's probably just as hated in Topeka as Governor Shalom Brownback was. For a little bit different ways, but he fights and fights and fights, and there are so many great ones that do fight. More so in the House, I think, than in the Senate, because he kind of sticks out there. But we really appreciate that very much, and that's why we continue to fight the good fight. It's really funny, though. He said something interesting, and that is that the Truth Caucus is growing. More and more Republicans wanting to join the Truth Caucus, which if you're not familiar with the Truth Caucus is like the Freedom Caucus at the federal level. It is the conservative group, the conservative caucus, that tries to fight for the conservative values within the Republican Party, which I find absolutely fascinating. And let's get into a little party politics for a second here. Now, look, I am a registered Republican. I have always been a registered Republican, and I probably will always be a registered Republican. Because I understand, and I know a lot of people, especially more in the libertarian flavor, disagree with this very vehemently on this, but that's okay. And I wanted to have the discussion today. But to me, in a general election, party trumps person. The primary is where you decide what type of flavor the party is going to be, what stance you want to have. Do you want it to be more conservative? Do you want to be more moderate in the Republican Party? Do you want it to be more progressive? Do you want it to be more moderate in the Democratic Party? And which, again, I don't understand what moderate actually means, and we can have that discussion as well if you'd like. But I am party trumps person in the general election. The primary, you set the tone for the party. And then in the general, you have the party that has the voice, that has the money, that has the influence, that has the numbers to actually advocate for something, or else you're going to be the third party that's irrelevant, that gets nothing done, but yet you feel good and proud about it because you stood up for what you believed in, which is great. Stand up for what you believe in, but you have to stand up to what you believe in a way that actually is effective, or else you're just banging your head against the wall. And if you feel that there's issues within a party, the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, then you fight to fix them. You don't run away from it. You don't unregister. You don't register as a libertarian. You don't register as an independent. You don't register as a whatever because you're upset with the party. Fix the party. And that's my argument that I've always had. I've always stuck to it. And I learned that from my mentor when I first got into radio, which was Mike Rosen out at 850 KOA in Denver. And that was his big argument. And I totally agree with him. And I will always stand, and I will carry on that torch now that he's officially retired from radio. I will carry on that torch and try and defend that the best way that I can. And he always talked about party trumps person. And I take it to the next level and say party trumps person. Let's focus and make the primary the most important election that we can have. But isn't it fascinating that no longer the platform, the mission statement, every business, you have a business, you have a mission statement, what you want to do, what your goal is, what your view is, what your stance is, what your vision is, what you want to do, whether it's customer service, whether it's providing a good product, whether it's whatever. Growing the business, your statement, your vision, your mission. That's what you have. And every party has that, which is why you and I, as a registered Republican or a registered Democrat or a registered whatever, that's why we openly join that party. It's because we agree and we fall in line with what that party represents. I'm a Republican because the mission statement by itself from the Republican Party says we believe in limited taxes. We believe in limited government. We believe in free enterprise. We believe in the private sector. We believe that the government should not be controlling you. That's what the Republicans believe in. That's the mission statement of the Republican Party. Which means you would think that when you say, I want to run for office as a Republican, you would actually uphold those values. And most of them do, to some degree. When you and I register to become a member of that party, we join that party because we agree with that vision. We agree with that message. So why is it that the Republican Party, and we could be talking at the state level, we could be talking at the federal level, and I'm truly, honestly stumped here, which is why I'm going to rely on you and for you to give me a call and let me know, because I am truly, honestly stumped. Why is it that the Republican Party at the state level, for example, right now, for the issue that we're going to talk about, has a Republican Party with a mission statement that says we believe in lower taxes, we believe in limited government, we believe in less regulation, we believe in the free enterprise, we believe in the private market, we believe in X, Y, and Z. That's what we believe in. That's why we're Republicans and why our elected officials are up there representing us under the Republican Party. Why is it then that we have to have inside the umbrella of the Republican Party a caucus like the Truth Caucus that has the exact same mission statement but yet disagrees with half the time what the Republican Party's doing? Why is it that we have to have under the umbrella sects and classes and groups within the umbrella arguing and bickering about different ideas and how to go about it? If we have the same vision of limited government, less taxes, less regulation, and a focus on the private sector and free enterprise, then that should be it. If a bill comes to the floor and says we're going to raise taxes, then it's very simple. Regardless of what kind of budgetary issue we're in, regardless of what kind of debt we're in, regardless of what type of growth or lack thereof growth in the private sector there has been, as a Republican, a bill that says we're going to raise taxes, we're going to spend more money from the taxpayers, a Republican that believes in limited government, less regulation, less taxes, free enterprise, private sector, would say no. Not a but a no, a very direct no. But that's not the case now. A Republican with a big R in front of their name says, we kind of need it. The government kind of needs it. Instead, inside the Republican umbrella, we have to have its own caucus that says, wait a second, here's a budget to where we don't have to raise taxes. Here's a budget to where we can propose consolidation of different agencies to where we can save a little bit of money. Here's an idea to where we can do an audit of our state government to where we actually don't have to raise money. We can actually just start growing the economy, and then we can start saving money and doing projects the way we need to. And the government can grow as a percentage of how great the GDP is growing for the states. And we can base things off of a ratio there. We can have a zero-sum game to where we're not actually stashing money away or we're in a deficit, but we're actually coming out even, which is the way it really should be. We have to have a caucus inside the own party that still has the same mission statement. They look really similar to one degree of limited taxes, less regulation, less spending, less government, more free enterprise, more private sector. But yet, members of the Republican Party that you are part of, most of you are part of, maybe you're not, that you are part of, say, you know what, let's raise the taxes, let's increase our spending because we have to do so. When did we get to the point to where the party that we joined no longer stands for anything to some degree, but we have to go into certain caucuses within the party where we're part of the party and part of a caucus? That's what I don't understand. 316-721-8255. And the Democrats are doing the same thing, by the way. The Democrats have the same issue. They're trying to figure out their identity right now because they're trying to keep it as a whole umbrella under one without separate caucuses within it. They're trying to keep themselves stable as just one group, but it's not working. They have the establishment Hillary Clinton types. They have the Bernie Sanders socialist types, and that's happening here in the state as well. They have the ones that say, let's socialize everything and let's just make it all government program funded. Others are saying, wait a second, I'm still kind of a traditional old school Democrat to where, to some degree, yes, but let's still focus on the private sector. They're having their identity crisis. The Republicans aren't really having an identity crisis. They're just having a war within it because there's too many ideas within the Republican Party. And under the same mission statement, they're interpreting it a different way to where somehow we get the mindset that a limited government, less regulation, and lower taxes somehow means increasing taxes for the largest tax increase in state history and spending more than we've ever spent before. I don't understand where that correlation comes from, which maybe somebody can explain to me. 316-721-8255. Let's go right to the phone. Shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Jim, good morning, sir. How are you?
Oh, I'll tell you, they won't tell me.
Well, there you go. One day at a time.
Yeah. Anyway, you said something this morning earlier about how World War II got the United States out of the Depression.
Yes.
Well, that worked because the United States manufactured ships and airplanes and everything for the other countries like England. And they actually paid us in gold and other things.
They paid us. Instead of us right now where we borrow $300 million a day from China to fund our own conflicts, we were actually putting people back to work. We were manufacturing and we were selling our products and we were making our own thing and funding it ourselves.
But worse than us borrowing money from China, we just run our printing press and print money to satisfy the welfare state.
Lowering the value of the dollar
exactly. I'm almost 72 years old. When I was 10 years old, I remember a news broadcast on the radio, and they announced that the dollar was worth 55 cents because we were paying off the tremendous debt of World War II, which
exactly.
ended about
thanks FDR
before.
And the Great Deal for that one.
And now we spend $4.5 trillion every year, which is about 16 times what World War II cost.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Every year.
I mean, one stimulus package from Barack Obama was about 3 times the great deal. Jim, I appreciate that very much. You're right. I mean, it's gotten so out of control that, yeah, when the panic was at that time of 55 cents value at the dollar, for every dollar it's only worth 55 cents. Nowadays, we don't even have that. I think it's worth like 12 cents, 16 cents. It's worth nothing. That's why we have the Federal Reserve backup on there, because it's actually not backed by any kind of standard. We just print off money, inject it into the system, inflate everything, lower the value, increase the cost of living because it costs more of the same money to be able to buy the same product. And then we say, oh, hey, we should raise minimum wage. The geniuses that run our nation. I tell you what, 316-721-8255. Let's take another phone call. Good morning. What's your name?
Hello?
Hello.
Am I on?
Yeah, yes, sir. How you doing?
I was talking to you the whole time. I thought you were talking to me.
Oh,
but you were
man.
actually talking to Jim.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, man. No, you are officially on and ready to go now.
Hello, Andy. It's Nick. How are you?
I'm great, Nick. It's good to talk to you.
Well, I'll start over again. The Kansas Republican Party affirms the Kansas Constitution in stating that we, the people of Kansas, are grateful to Almighty God for our civil and religious privileges. If we cannot unify under that banner and get past that first sentence, then anything that we build on any other foundation will come crumbling to the ground, whether it's traditional marriage, social programs, how we do healthcare or food and nutrition or whatever. So I think we have to start with that baseline, unify as a Republican Party under that, and then all the other things will come to life as they are supposed to be.
Absolutely. That's a really great point. I mean, when we forget our basic foundation, which is what we have at the national level, governmental-wise itself, but as the party, as long as we remember our foundational roots and the foundation of what we're actually standing for and what we're representing, then you're right. It kind of falls into place, and that's the problem, is that we've forgotten that. Just as we've forgotten that any type of agency or department outside of the government at the federal level, outside of the Constitution, is really a violation of the Constitution. The fact that we've forgotten that the state government actually are supposed to be more powerful than the federal government, and that it's a compact of the different states saying that there's specific duties for the federal government. As long as we forget the facts of what the role of the separation of powers are between the Supreme Court and the legislature, then we don't remember our basic foundations. And as a party, you're right. If we forget the basic foundations of the party and why we started the party and what we're standing for, then it's open game. And really, and that's what we're seeing right now. It's open game, and we don't know what we stand for.
Absolutely. And once we do that, then we can do our sword sharpening skills on other minor issues. I really enjoy Helen coming in and injecting some of her stuff there, and I appreciate that. And maybe someday we can get into a healthy debate about natural occurring substances, as it will. But I thank you, Andy, and you have a good day.
I always love it, Nick. I appreciate it very much. And actually, speaking of that, let's focus on that a little bit tomorrow. I've been seeing the stories about the store that's selling the different products here in the Wichita area, and I've seen stories about how they're trying to use the shenanigans of you buy a T-shirt and you get pot on the side with it, with a naturally grown product there, to where you're not purchasing the product, you're just buying the T-shirt and it just came along as a freebie with you, and trying to find the loopholes there. So it's been a big discussion. And then on the other hand, the state legislature coming down and saying that any type of form of that product, any type of substance within it, the THC or the CBD or whatever else is in there that they're trying to sell, is all going to be categorized as marijuana, as an illegal substance. So we'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow, Nick. So definitely stay tuned and call in for that one, because that will be definitely fun. It is that time. I have not forgotten. I promise you, it's that time as we've done it the last couple of days.
Okay, here we go, people.
Call now at 721-8255 for your ultimate Valentine's on KQAM.
Oh, there it is. It's the Ultimate Valentine's Day giveaway that we're doing with KQAM, brought to you by AutoTech. It's every day now through Tuesday next week. We're going to get someone registered. We'll have 7 registrants, which means you got a 1 in 7 chance. It's pretty good. And we'll give you a $75 package, including a free oil change, windshield wiper blade and replacement, wash and vacuum of the vehicle, plus a rose and a box of chocolates for your significant other. It's time to call right now. Caller number one at 721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We'll get you registered for the Ultimate Valentine's Day, brought to you by the Big Talker KQAM and AutoTech, right here on KQAM. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up the show today right here on the Big Talker KQAM along with KGPT TV. Welcome aboard. Happy Thursday to you. Hopefully you enjoy it. Tomorrow, of course, it's your Free-for-All Friday. We can talk about whatever you want to. I do want to remind you or let you know of, and we'll have someone on Monday talking about this, but if you're involved or interested in the Convention of States movement at the statewide level, now's the time to start rallying and getting excited about this. The bill has officially been presented in committee, Senate Committee Bill 1611, and it's going to be presented to the committee on Wednesday next week. Right now, in the Senate, which is very impressive, 17 co-sponsors, and Senate President Susan Weigel is fully on board at the top of the list as one of the sponsors of the bill. So this is really big news. If you're involved in the Convention of States movement, the Article 5 Convention of States, getting the state of Kansas on board with this, wanting to be involved in the convention, this is the way to do it. So if you want to call your senator, your state senators, go up to Topeka if you have an opportunity to do so, rally, get everybody you know to be aware of this, get them engaged, get them excited, and get ready for the bill to be presented in committee on Wednesday next week. We'll have a rep from the Convention of States Movement on Monday to talk about this a little bit more on exactly what it is and where it's going to be and whether they feel they have the momentum. The fact that we have 17 co-sponsors on the bill and the head of it is the Senate President, Susan Weigel, is huge. And I'm really excited about that. So, yes, that's happening on Wednesday with that bill being presented into committee on the Senate side. So the Article 5 Convention of States finally beginning to get some traction. Maybe this is the year that we can actually get on board with it. That would be really nice, wouldn't it? So we'll have more information on that as we continue on next week. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak loud, speak out, speak proud, speak the truth, always speak some reason. As we always do, this is the Voice of Reason. Have a great Thursday, everybody. Friday, right around the corner. Big guest coming on tomorrow. We'll let you know who that is tomorrow morning. This is the Voice of Reason. Have a great Thursday, everybody.